OG Monster Hunter fans, I just played DOS. It was awesome. But you know what these young bloods all over the internet threads are talking about? They're saying that you guys are uptight boomers. You won't admit that Monster Hunter has changed for the better as they call your beloved games clunky. I read it with my own eyes. Stay safe, okay? And hey, you! Are you a new generation Monster Hunter player? Nice. I'm just like you, started with World. Hey, you know what these boomers are saying about you? They're saying Europe, new Monster Hunter games are for babies. I heard it with my own ears. Stay safe out there, okay? Whoa, don't fight guys, we're all friends here, we're fans of the same franchise. I really think we can find things to love in the philosophy of both the old and new games. Look, how about this? You watch my video. I'm a new generation hunter who started with World Iceborne, played Rise for 16 hours before my save file got corrupted, thank you Rise, and recently played Wilds and really liked it. But ever since I started, I always had a fascination with the old titles, particularly the first and second gen,
What the hell, boy?
because they seem to be really of a different era. After my Wilds journey, I finally decided to go back to the roots. Well, the base of the stem, I guess, because I picked DOS. Why not the first Monster Hunter? Don't I hate myself? Yes, but not that much. And from what I've seen online, the third generation is where Capcom began to clean things up a bit. Less getting hit by the air, controls that were made for humans with 10 fingers. I didn't want that. I wanted to get smacked for good. But I also wanted to have fun, so the second generation seemed best. And I didn't pick the more popular Freedom Unite because DOS seemed to be a proto-Wilds of sorts, with its seasonal system really aiming for a dynamic world that would change in the summer, winter, and sex. With monsters, materials, and even locations being limited depending upon the season and time of day, this really excited me. I love feeling like nothing. Not a world-saving hero, just a cog in the machine. And DOS definitely made me feel like not a hero. So, if you want to take on this optional investigation, I have thoughts about this game that I believe are quite fresh. I also want to clarify that this is not going to be a head-to-head video. It's a new generation hunter trying out the old stuff. So if you want to know my overall feelings on Wilds, check out my other video. This video is going to be focused on DOS, and I'll talk about the newer games as and when comparisons are necessary. With all that out of the way, let's begin. I want to answer the big million Zenny question first. Is old school Monster Hunter really so much harder than newer games?
Yes, kid.
Of course. Have you not seen those clips? I'm sorry, new hunters. I've heard a lot of people submit to the idea that the hardest Monster Hunter game is the one you start with, and my findings reported to be
what a segment.
You are not prepared for those. What about 8-star Tempered Gormalgala? What about Primordial Malzeno? What about Allotrion and Fatalis? This is not about the peak difficulty in any given game, okay? This is about the entire experience. And here's why DOS will make you experience emotional sexual assault.
I'm new to that. Oh.
Firstly, the wonderful controls. Moving the camera with the D-pad and using the right stick for attacking while the action buttons enjoy the show. Give the genius who came up with this the Nobel death penalty, because there is nothing better than having to take my finger off the dodge button to rotate the camera to see the attack that I need to dodge. I suggest you use a controller with the D-pad on top of the left stick, unlike mine, so you can at least get a hermitar grip going. But honestly, the camera control by itself is not the worst. Of course, you don't have the freedom of control that the superior mouse and keyboard gives you. Mouse and keyboard gang rise up, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly. The main problem is the way the camera moves. Looking left and right is as normal as looking at Gemma Rule 34. It gets the job done. But up and down for some reason is not a smooth movement. Instead, there are 4 fixed angles and the lowest is purposefully made to fuck you as you are pressing left and right on the D-pad and accidentally hit down. Not gonna lie, old school fans, first impressions were about as good as being born a cat in the Monster Hunter universe.
Days never finished, master got me working.
But all is not lost, because when you're around walls, you can say bye-bye to even the small semblance of control you had. The memo is, you're not special. You're here, getting angry over Monster Hunter difficulty. You are not in control. This game will remind you of that at every step. And nowhere is it more clear than in the fights themselves. New Monster Hunter is very reactive, especially Rise and Wilds. You hit the monster, you see an attack coming, you roll, you hit the monster. In DOS, you can't always keep up the pressure. I want you to take a good hard look in the mirror. Whatever you see, that's not who you are anymore. In DOS, you need to be a good little girl and let the monster do its thing. Finish its routine or you'll suffer the consequences. Always be mindful of your position. Never get cornered and pick your battles carefully. Some arenas will be too cramped to fight in. Just wait it out and let the monster do its thing till it decides to move to another zone and you can play the game again. Different seasons and different times of day will also change what small monsters are present in any given zone. Plan accordingly and let the monsters do their thing. Fighting Diablos in the zone at day or night is not just a skybox change. There's a day and night difference. Please laugh because I'm not laughing. Another example. Fighting Gravios during the day will let you cheese it apparently from this ledge which is inaccessible at night. These changes matter because believe me, you need to take every chance you get to cheese or just make your life a little easier. You know how Dark Souls fans keep going on about how they love the series because the games are challenging but always fair? No fan is going to tell you that Monster Hunter 2 is fair. Hips don't lie and neither the hip hitboxes.
Are there any, objective reasons to say definitively that Plesioth's hitbox is, bad game design?
Are there any, objective reasons to say definitively that Plesioth's hitbox is, bad game design?
You'll not be able to dodge a lot of attacks that you should be able to, but that'll honestly not even be your biggest problem. You'll eventually recognize what hitboxes have broken and learn to avoid them like a Vespoid on crack. But almost all large monsters in the game have some sort of bullshit move that they can whip out of nowhere with zero telegraph. And you're often going to get thrown around and comboed and stunned like a teenage slong during COVID. Worst of all is the roar, which can stun you for longer, sometimes way longer than the monster's animation of the roar. And you'll suddenly find yourself helplessly tumbling about as a big guy has his way with you. I've heard some people say that you can just roll through it, and sure, you can just dodge the UFC Champion's punch while a bunch of top 10 contenders are swarming around you and you've been given a contraption around your neck which lets you look up and down at only 4 angles and the audience is going to whip your head around when you are near the walls. You can do that, but it's not just about getting hit. It's about jank. When you see that a monster has already finished roaring but the roar is actually not over, it just doesn't feel good even if you made the mistake of mistiming a dodge. Just like it doesn't feel good when you have to fight the camera even though you made a positioning error. It is janky because it is unimmersive. It should feel like the monster takes advantage of your mistake, not the camera or frame data. Also, since you don't have a silhouette of your character when under a monster, it makes it difficult to see what you are doing and where exactly you are placed. Especially when you think you signed up for a one-on-one but it turns into a gangbang. Now I'll talk about the big monsters more later, but right now I want to focus on this gangbang. There was a time when gangbangs were new to me. It felt weird, it felt disgusting. But call me a gooner for Monster Hunter 2, I actually grew to enjoy the fact that the small monsters are big brutal killers in disguise. The bad camera is ultimately what takes them from hard to unfair. So change the cameraman, not the performers, Capcom. Now that the camera is fixed, you can bring back some of that oomph.
Embarrassing!
Small monsters in newer games are just one step above gathering spots. They don't pose any threat and as a result aren't memorable at all. Compare any new small monster to the Bullfango, which not only shares its first name with Bully Maguire but also its behavior. You have to keep track of a Bullfango when fighting a larger monster, otherwise your life will be very difficult. If there's more than one, you better take out some of them or it's just better to leave and wait for the large monster in a different zone. The crabs are arguably more annoying with their faster and varied moves, but they have low HP and only threaten you during the early hours of your playthrough. Kongas are non-arguably, non-negotiably, non-debatably the worst. They have huge health pools, can rush you easily and commit humanitarian crimes on you, disabling any potion usage until you can pass the survive check. Even a single Konga with a large monster can ruin your entire hunt. If there's more, just put the fries in the bag and leave. You won't be able to kill them while also looking out for the bigger threat. Fight smart. And who can forget the cats who will pounce on you for every penny you have. Only the black ones though. The yellow ones are all about peace and loyalty and will only attack you in defense of their black friends. Very interesting choice, Japan. Very interesting. I think I was saying that I like the small monsters in this game, and yeah, I do. I just have some scars. In newer games with good cameras and larger areas, aggressive small monsters won't be nearly as annoying as in DOS. So give it to us, Capcom. No one complains that the Great Gyros fight was frustrating. It was dull. Wilds promised a hurt system, but it's more of a gimmick than a mechanic. It looks cool, but you're expected to just isolate the monster that you want to fight. I think it's about time that the small monsters are treated as more than just bone piles with extra steps. Wilds DLC should have a monster that is really based around group fighting. With the amount of control focus mode gives the player, crowd control would be completely possible. Maybe. I don't know how you'd balance weapons like the gun lance there, but I didn't advertise the herd mechanic. I'm not Capcom, I just fap and come.
Say fuck that!
As it is now, just compare the Kongas in DOS to the Kongas in Wilds, and you'll see that the former is the game where small monsters matter. And yes, I like it. Yes, I like it. There's more strategizing involved for the most part. DOS gets you out of that dopamine-filled gooning TikTok mindset and makes you stop and think about the best course of action in every situation. Say it with me, Elon Musk fans. Limitations show you your freedoms. This extends beyond the fighting to gathering as well. Because remember, this is Monster Hunter, not Monster Hunter with a gatherer wife. You are maidenless. That's why you have so much time to play Monster Hunter DOS, where gathering materials is much more time intensive than newer games. First up, back to the time cycle, seasons and time of day change what you can gather. Honey is not available during winter. Sunrise herbs, which you need for potions, are only available during the day. These are the most crucial ones, but all the bugs and mushrooms and flowers and sometimes even ores are affected by the flow of time, just like us. And anti-aging cream sponsorship would have gone harder, not gonna lie. So please like, share and subscribe if you like my content so I can stop asking you to like, share and subscribe if you like my content. Now I want to talk a bit about the early game for a bit, because the difference in philosophy between new and old gen can be seen right here. Look at me. What do you notice? A 6'4" women's rights podcast enjoyer? Of course, but look more closely. No armor. Now let's check out my equipment. Just a sword and shield. You truly start out at the bottom in DOS. And money is tight in this game. There's also no rollbacks for equipment, so you have to be careful about your investments because they really impact you. But don't worry, the game opens strong. You may not know it yet, but you'll come to appreciate the first quest available to you throughout your hunting journey. It is the best quest in the entire game. The Unique Mushroom Quest. The Unique Mushroom Quest. Unique Mushroom Quest. Unique Mushroom Quest. This quest is like low-tier God's syrup. I keep coming back because I keep smelling the syrup. Do you smell it too? It smells like honey and blue mushrooms and sunrise herbs. And do you hear it? The sound of potions crafting successfully and not a large monster in sight. Whenever you take a break from hunting monsters, when you get to preparing for a hunt, you'll find yourself here again, relaxed and joyful. A nice little substitute for the improved free roam in newer Monster Hunters. Look guys, delivering 5 unique mushrooms isn't a big deal, but being able to explore a region on your own terms without any restrictions is just better. Especially since being able to access your supply box at any time doesn't have any downsides for gathering like it does for hunting. And also, there's no non-hunting quest for any region other than the jungle in DOS. Sure, you can take on quests for weak monsters in different regions or end via subquests, but you're always going to be stressing out about getting caught. Gathering and small monsters is already a toxic combination. You add a large monster into the mix,
your chances of winning drastically go down.
But gathering is not a coin with two sides. This the good, this the bad. It's more like the bag of rice I would buy your daughter with, like some dude in a cave
did 300 years ago.
An unknowable number of grains constantly swerving over each other, changing shape again and again. You are that bag of rice. Happy now, frustrated later, peaceful in between, excited in between the in-betweens. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly where gathering turns from to. The process of gathering is boring and if monsters are around,
You're toast.
at the same time it is a nice and necessary break from the challenge of fighting monsters who are 100% going to
Kick your butt.
The thing is, the challenges are grueling enough that you'll be spending a lot of time gathering. At least you should, because being prepared has a huge tangible impact on your hunts.
My entire life is different than it would have been otherwise.
But like I said, you can't just go out and gather freely, which can lead to a sense of wasted time, growing and growing like the bond between man and his best friend till what seemed nice and innocent turns dark and grueling. As you wait out a large monster that's in a zone you need to gather in, as you take on a quest again and again since you don't have your item box out in the field, as you drag through the timer and end screen every time you complete a quest, the annoyances add up. What keeps you going is the impending threat. A large monster that just played Ludo with your balls as the dice, the wall that you want to climb and piss on, seeing your preparations come to fruition step by step, readying the items you'll be using, fitting your hunter with quality gear, imagining what nefarious things you'll do to the monster's carcass. It's what keeps you going and makes the process fun. And then you get to the fight and you realize that thinking about the hunt was much more fun than the actual hunt itself. And it puts a little bit of a damper on preparation when you know that what you're preparing for is going to be disappointing.
Is immeasurable.
So I don't really know what to feel about the gathering overall. One moment it feels relaxing, one moment annoying. And that is really representative of the game as a whole. It has incredible highs and frustrating lows. And now that I've covered gathering, I want to explore this sentiment with hunts. Or hunt, rather. I've chosen a specific monster for the task, because with this beast, it wasn't just a hunt. It was a legacy.
I come for legacy.
So get ready for the story of What Controller versus Plesioth. Once upon a time, there was a naive fool called Cunt, short for Controller. He had heard of Monster Hunter 2 having annoying fights, but fool that he was, he thought Cephadrome was the most annoying monster everyone complained about. Innocent but lucky, he managed to kill the Piscine Wyvern on his first try with just the sonic bombs given to him by the guild. He edged out the victory at the last ticks of the clock and thought he had got through the worst. Oh, how he was wrong. At 3 stars came the daddy of Piscine Wyverns, but replaced the A with I. Plesioth oiled me up and gave me the fucking of a lifetime. I took to the dark streets of Reddit and found out that Plesioth is indeed considered more annoying than Cephadrome. Hip check memes littered the site like radiation from a nuclear fallout, but in the fight itself there was much more waiting for me. The sonic bombs that sent Cephadrome flailing out of the sand were more like request letters for Plesioth, which he would often deny. He also had the brutal tail swipe with the same amount of hitbox egregiousness as the hip check without any of the telegraph. And the rotting cherry on top of this shit cake was the stupid hurt box on his head where my hammer would too many times miss even when it landed. Like other challenges I had encountered up to this point, like say Gypsaros, Plesioth trashed me so hard that I knew I couldn't brute force my way out of this one. I had to prepare. So began my training arc, and like Boruto's dad, I needed a Kakashi in my life. And here I want to give a huge shout out to the Monster Hunter Old School Wiki. Without the folks putting up all that info, I wouldn't have made it till the end. You guys don't know me, but I love you old geezers. That's Japanese for the father figure I never had. Now, I feel kind of bad about having all the information I needed on the internet because I missed out on the true experience of Monster Hunter 2 that all the people playing it for the first time went through. But at the same time, I really don't, because the game is super stingy with a lot of information. Look at the wonderful weapon trees and wilds, so clean and succinct that it makes you want to use words like succinct to describe it. Here's how it looks in DOS. Just like a worthless person, it doesn't exist. The game also doesn't tell you what skills actually do, and you'll have to discover item combinations by yourself as well. I searched online and found out that Plesioth is weak to status effects and found myself a sword and shield with paralysis that I could craft with a reasonable amount of grind. A lot of people were also saying that a ranged weapon would make easy work of Plesioth, but look guys, I'm not racist, okay? I'm not. I don't care what other people do, I don't care what these gunsters are up to. Just don't bring it in my space, okay? It's my personal choice. And I do have a bowgun, okay? I use it to farm Vespoids for monster fluid, since these bugs explode into nothingness unless you poison them. I just didn't want to use ranged weapons for hunts. Especially for Plesioth, it was a pride thing. Sure, ranged weapons might have made the fight feel easier and it wouldn't have been cheating or anything, but I had to prove to myself that I was a real gamer. If I wasn't a gamer, I was nothing. So I let the breeding season wither away, short as any dream. With Plesioth still roaming the desert sands, my focus diverted to building my gear. I prepared through spring and I would prepare through summer and destroy Plesioth in the winter. So arrived the warm season, putting the desert out of reach, but bringing plenty herbs and honey as lovely and as temperate as the summer's day. In the joy of a simple gathering life and thoughts of hunting better, summer too passed by swiftly. Then came the winter of my discontent. I realized that the Plesioth hunt was not available during the cold season. You might think that it's just a season away, but I was itching to go. My balls were full and I needed to unload. And how would I pass the time? It was winter, what could I gather? Hunt other monsters? And waste the potions I stockpiled? No, I couldn't wait. I knew the value of Zenny, but this would be worth it. I went into a coma induced by losing 800 doubloons and woke up straight in the breeding season again. It was time. I failed again. Paralysis was good and fine, but the problem really was getting close to the big fish in the first place. The tailspin out of nowhere was a constant threat, and even the hip check, which had a telegraph, was difficult to see because Plesioth is just a big boy, and I've already talked about camera issues, so after getting my ass handed to me a few times, I learned one safe way to deal with him. An incredible fight with a soundtrack that kept reminding me of how much fun I should have been having. But well, I guess I cheesed the Plesioth fight. Do I feel bad about it? Brother, come over here. If you ever feel bad about cheesing in Monster Hunter 2, we're done. Don't ever not sing that low. You need to take every chance you get. So I failed the quest again. I mean, you can't get him to do what you want 100% of the time, and once that jet spray loop is broken, it's difficult to get him back on track. And so, as I kept dying, I began to realize that DOS is actually not a very good game. I mean, Plesioth was really bad, but the other monsters hadn't been that great either. There had been only a handful of good fights so far: Daimyo Hermitar, Kongalala, Blangonga, Rati. Oh! I did it. I beat Plesioth. When I'm recording footage, I make audio notes of what's happening so I don't get jumbled up later, and here's my note upon capturing Plesioth.
Captured Plesioth.
I really was ecstatic. I had breached a wall that so many hunters complained about. Was it worth it? Yes, actually. Despite the unfair elements of the fight, that feeling of victory, especially after so much deliberate preparation, was worth it. And then I fought Gravios. At this point, the realization finally dawned on me that the game was a perpetual tug-of-war between frustration and joy. And as I got raw-dogged by Gravios again and again, I was actually starting to get sick of the game. Gravios didn't have hitboxes as bad as Plesioth, but they were still very far from good. It's still old-school Monster Hunter we're talking about. But the worst was his roar, which lasted longer than the average Indian cereal. But if Enraged only lasted longer than the average Indian cereal on our part, while the big guy finished fast and decided he was done with us. The only thing keeping me going at this point was the desire to make this video, especially since I was so close to the end. I even sank to the depths of using a heavy bowgun. It was about as useful as spitting on the monster, since Gravios' weak spot was his belly, and hip firing didn't really get to it unless I was close enough where I could just use a melee weapon. And I would rather watch Plesioth shove his Plesicock into my ass in the Hall of Mirrors for an entire breeding season than aim with a controller. So I went back to the drawing room again. And here I will admit to a mistake of mine and warn you about how not to play DOS. Don't rush like me. I wanted to make this video in time, so I didn't spend all that much time grinding. But the game is grinding. It doesn't start with endgame, it's the heart of the experience. I can imagine if I had found this game as a kid, I would have spent hundreds of hours watching porn like it did, but I would also have found time in between gooning for grinding. I'd probably have taken dozens more hours to get through the story than I did now. So please, take your time with this game. And also take bite-sized pieces. A little gathering here, a little hunting there is probably the best way to enjoy this game, instead of playing for several hours a day. I rushed, and I made my life harder. The thought of making a better armor set was giving me the ick. But I still had enough energy for a new hammer, thank you again Monster Hunter Old School, and also some traps and bombs and oh, I can't stay mad at you for long Monster Hunter DOS, come here. In World, I used bombs for a while, but eventually grew comfortable with my weapon damage, and by the time of Wilds didn't even consider it. But in DOS, they are really useful. Again, cementing how integral preparation is in this game. With big damage in mind, I took on Gravios again. I lost, I learned, I lost some more, and I learned some more till finally... It was over. I had climbed the wall. Again. This was even more cathartic than the Plesioth victory. I didn't even reach for my phone to record an audio note. I had a fever that day, I was pushing myself, and after winning, I just sank into my gaming stool with my hand on my face, like I was Lana Rothschild googling my mother's name for the first time. But unlike that little bullying victim, the emotions were not of despair. It was the most thrill the game had ever made me feel. I took medicine for my fever and I still couldn't fall asleep from all the adrenaline. The game was truly special. Diablo's time! Diablo's time! Diablo's time! I'm an honest guy. Diablos is actually a very fun fight. His tail swipe is a bit broken, but all his other moves have great hitboxes. And although like every other monster he can use his mouth to stun and combo you, it never turns into an inevitable KO. Maybe it can and I just got lucky, but the challenge with Diablos was just his massive health pool. Why does he have more health than the elder dragons of the game? I kept carting or running out of time. One time I got him limping but made the mistake of running to the bed to recover some health since I was about to run out of potions. It's one of the choices the game lets you make and I made the wrong one, underestimating the vast desert sands. I ran out of time again. And I gave up. I saw a chance and took it. I needed to give the village chief a twisted horn to progress through the game, and that could be achieved via the subquest. So I skipped Diablos and moved on to the final fight. And it felt good in a way. I'm not trying to cover up my failure, I swear on your mother's life. I think it's kind of cool that you can still progress through the game while skipping a monster that you find tough or annoying. You can't go through the entire game without hunting anything. I started a new game and checked my inner racism while also trying to progress through the story without hunting Velocidrome and Bulldrome, only completing the subquests, and it didn't work out. And this might be controversial since the game is called Monster Hunter, but I think it would have been a cool choice to subquest your way through, if not all, a decent chunk of the game. The only reason I thought it was possible in the first place was because the game had made it clear that decision making was one of its top priorities. And now I want to highlight how DOS achieves that brilliantly. I've been talking about preparing for hunts all this while, but there is one key element that I left out so far. The item pouch. Unlike real life, you can't carry all that baggage in this game. There's only so much you can take into a hunt, and deciding what you need to take also means deciding what you need to sacrifice. And again, unlike real life, your decisions matter. A big component of this is the crafting, which has a success rate system. When you craft something, you can either get the item you're looking for or garbage. A single item can have more than one combo for being crafted, and generally the less the number of ingredients and quality of ingredients in a combo, the greater the success rate. You can use the services of the combo master in the village for a fee depending on the rarity of the combo, but more interesting are the combo books you can purchase from him, which improve the odds of success if you hold them in your pouch. And book 2 only works if you have book 1, and book 3 only works if you have books 1 and 2 and so on till book number 5. You can probably already guess how this benefits the game with its decision making, but it took me a while to see it. At first I was annoyed. What was this? Some sort of medieval feudalism? I thought it was a limitation meant to just add frustration that didn't have much impact on gameplay other than having the combo books as something to save Zenny for. When I was getting my ass kicked by Gravios and really considering everything that I needed to bring, I realized that without my combo books, there was a decent chance of turning into Asmongold by the end of the hunt. So I carried the 2 books I had been using up to that point and bought 2 more new and expensive ones. 4 item slots. That's a lot. And then I had the bombs and traps and the ingredients for more bombs and traps. To make space, I had to forgo many items that I usually carried. And it felt good. So this is what old players meant by lack of preparation in newer entries. Some fans argue that there is preparation involved in newer games, and yes, there is in the sense that you can craft items to make your life easier, but there isn't in the sense that you have to decide what you want to bring and not bring for a particular monster, which will influence your strategy. Take my fight with Lunastra. I thought it would be easier than Diablos because you fight Elder Dragons over the course of 3 hunts, weakening them each time, but she wasn't as easy as I thought she would be. Which was good. This was the final boss of hard game. It just didn't feel good at first because the tough fights like Plesioth and Gravios had been annoying rather than fun. So I was looking at Lunastra in a biased way, thinking, oh, this hitbox is unfair or this move is unfair. But then I got my third world ass out of my sweaty gamer stool, looked in the mirror and said I deserved to be oppressed. Because as I learned Lunastra's ins and outs, I realized that I had a skill issue, and the fight itself turned out to be very fair and fun. There was, however, the problem of her fire aura, which made it impossible to dish out damage in large chunks and completely changed the flow of the hunt.
A good man would have
Brought poison to temporarily negate the fire aura.
a great man.
Crafted a weapon with dragon element so they could break Lunastra's head and permanently piss on her fiery spirit. No hate on Lunastra, by the way, I love her. I rushed the fight, so I had a harder time. But I was not a bottom feeder yet. Some options still remained. This time I didn't bring traps, trap materials and bomb materials like for Gravios and Diablos. So with all that extra space, I took immunizers, which made my health regen faster after getting the Auschwitz treatment, and also Mega Demon drugs to make up for my hammer with good damage but very little green sharpness. I also carried flash bombs and materials to craft extra potions and mega potions, and 2 combo books to make sure the crafting was guaranteed. And with a bit of patience and a bit of luck from all the times I milked my juicy Poogie, I was able to finish the fight on my own terms. In that moment, I knew that sacrificing all my real-life obligations for this game was the best decision I ever made. I know we're not gonna get this type of in-depth system back, but I really wish we would. Hell, I think even hidden combinations could work. Just make the books of combos unlock different tiers of combinations along with the success rate boost. I really think the difficulty and choices are tied deeply together in DOS, and I guess other old gen games. In the terrible hitboxes and roars into build-up less attacks, I see the birth of the card system. There's randomness in fights. We're not gonna polish it up, but you can have 3 tries. DOS provides hurdles but always gives you the option to do something about it. Black Cat stealing your items, buy some Felvines. Small monsters annoying you, wait it out. Out of money, sell the items that you've been hoarding in your box. Running out of potions, sacrifice some items to bring ingredients or forage from the land. You always have choices in this game. But, like goth mommies and every other girl, they weren't all created equal. Like the option to sleep during hunts. It sucks. It can be a very boring and tedious crutch for new players. Why forage from the land when I can go to my master bed and masturbate and get back to the hunt? But that's at least very optional. A worse example of choice is having to wait out a monster if it's in a bad zone. The choice here is not fighting the monster in one zone or another, with each zone having its own benefits and downsides. It's getting bored or getting wrecked, because some areas are just not made for fighting. And dung bombs apparently only work on 4 monsters in the game. I didn't test it out, but even if they were always reliable, I think having zones that you clearly shouldn't fight in sacrifices too much of gameplay flow for immersion. And here I slowly segue into the biggest downside of Monster Hunter 2's difficulty. The game doesn't respect you. Like I said earlier, you are nothing. And the positive way in which this manifests is making you feel like a cog in the wheel of nature, putting you against huge and unfair seeming challenges that you can win. But the negative side is that the game treats your time like crypto bros treat their hard-earned money. Paintballs. We all know about them. If you haven't experienced them, you've at least heard the stories. And I can attest, paintballs suck balls. Now tracking itself isn't a grandma with dementia you should throw in the garbage. You are a hunter after all, and being able to see the location of a monster on the map without any effort is likely to make you feel like a gamer playing a hunting game instead. And I don't know, if I constantly reminded Messi that his ball getting inside a post doesn't actually mean anything, he'd probably not love playing soccer as much as he does. I think the tracking system in World was great, even perfect I might add, because even though monster locations are revealed permanently after a time, it makes sense within the world, haha. You sniff a monster's poop and rub its delicious footprints and so on so much that the bugs can track its scent easily. It does not break immersion. I can understand why they removed it for Rise, but it should definitely have made a comeback in Wilds. But boomer that I'm becoming, I think a paintball system could still work as well. Just put the 10-minute timer in the bag, little bro. Having the paintball last for only 10 minutes might not seem like a big deal. You just need to remember to throw it every 10 minutes. But remembering isn't the problem. You'll learn to remember. But like I mentioned earlier, the monsters can often go on a cheesed up rampage, and you might faint right as the paintball says bye bye. Even if you don't faint, the monster might run away after giving you a thorough beating, and you'll miss your paintball by just a smidge and wonder if you should just give everything up and go back to coke for the next several minutes as you run around aimlessly through the whole map. You also can't figure out where a monster is going simply by using your eyes. What, you thought this was a mobile game? Oh, baby wants boo boo. Monsters often head in one direction but then loop around and end up in a completely different zone. And what can I say about the burrowing enemies? Yes, spit on me before you fuck me.
Bye bye.
Please Capcom, just make us run around aimlessly once per fight. Why do you laugh at our sorrow? Well, used to laugh anyway, since this is not the case anymore, but correct your overcorrection now. Add some sort of tracking. I've also mentioned how gathering, while worthwhile, is still a slow and grindy process. Game is just a grind, and it's enjoyable in the sum of its parts, of being immersed in the hunter fantasy, slowly and meticulously preparing for tough fights, but it's not enough to completely remove the moment-to-moment tedium. I want to end this section with a suggestion. Listen, Capcom, are you listening? I can't tell where your ears are. Look, if you remaster the game for PC and newer consoles, which you should, they'd sell like the Vivarian Madam's bathwater. If you do that, you probably won't rework the gathering system or speed up the animations or anything that requires some hard work. Not unless you remake the games entirely like the recent Resident Evils. But what you can do is give us a restart option and a fast forward option. Relax, Monster Hunter DOS fans. I know it seems to go against the slow and methodical nature of the game, but health insurance also seems to be an insurance for health. But things are not always how they seem. Firstly, the option to restart a quest. Did any of you, upon failing a quest, ever restock your supplies to try the hunt again? I never did. I just said no thanks, I have a boyfriend to saving, and reloaded the game to try the hunt again. It's the same as having a restart option, but just with tedium. As for the ability to fast forward, Capcom has already implemented turbo mode before in games like Street Fighter and DMC, and I know Monster Hunter is a totally different kind of game, but what would it really affect? No one is going to speed up hunts, they're already difficult as it is. People will just use it to speed up moments of downtime, when you're searching aimlessly after a monster, when you're waiting for a monster to leave a zone, when you're upgrading weapons with the same fucking unskippable cutscene playing again and again. I like you, Granny, but I'm gonna get my revenge. The most cheesy thing I can imagine is changing the seasons, but turbo mode doesn't mean 1000 times the normal speed, I'm talking about like double the normal speed. And waiting for the season to change is still going to be a long ass process at that pace. Changing the time of day maybe not so much, but it's not that much worse at normal speed, so I think turbo mode, good. If you disagree, this suggestion is for remasters of old games though. I think the new gen system of having a farm or some sort of auto harvest mechanic is good. At least the intention is good. I think the plan is to make you partake in manual gathering through the early game, and in the late game when you want to just fight monsters and get dripped out, you don't have to worry about it. But the easiness of the early game is what ruins it, because you'll be doing just fine with the supply items, and even casually gathering stuff on your way to the monsters will lead to an eventual pile of potions and antidotes and a lot of things. I think the balance in World was much better than in Rise and Wilds, but it was my first Monster Hunter game, so I used a lot of potions and also crafted a lot of gear in the early game as well. No shame, unless you want to shame me. Now, would I like the early game in newer gen games to be as hard as in DOS? Of course not. But would I like them to be a little bit harder? Yes, but I do understand where the devs are coming from. They're trying to get new players on board and also appease the old players. So in Wilds they made the story section really easy and kept the really tough fights as optional investigations. And although the game could be better balanced, I think it strikes a healthy compromise to give both new and old players a good experience. I want more players to get into Monster Hunter, and DOS is not the title to do it. Not talking about the optimization, Wilds is great and undeserving of a lot of the hate. But let's wind back a bit. I think it's starting to sound like I don't recommend DOS. But there is something that I've skimmed over so far. Praised the game for it but didn't go into depth. But without the shadow of a doubt, it's the biggest strength of this game. That's why I've saved it for last. Immersion. Now guys, I know it's pretentious, but I'm gonna be talking about the art side of video games, okay? Because I know it sounds fancy and all, but Monster Hunter 2 has great artistic merit. This, dear audience, was the reenactment of a gamer in 2025, identifiable by a long history of wanting games to be recognized as art and a distinct lack of backbone when talking about games as art. I beseech you, rise above this awkwardness. Don't flinch when you hear ludonarrative dissonance. Don't give a "oh haha, it's a bit pretentious" preamble before calling a game a work of art. We say games are art, let's mean it. Sorry if I came off as a bit preachy there. You can do whatever you want. I'm just a bit tired of hearing gamers talk about video games as art in a very shy or awkward way. And it's what I'm going to try to avoid now. And I tried to write a script where I can balance comedy and seriousness, but I guess I'm not a good enough writer, so there won't be a lot of jokes here. If you were just here for that, that's actually nice. I do want my videos to be mostly purely entertainment, but here, just bear with me. Now Monster Hunter doesn't have a good reputation with stories besides 4, and DOS's story can be side-waved as inconsequential very easily as well. There's barely a story at all. Hunter comes to village, he helps grow the village by hunting. There aren't any twists in between, and there's no character arcs for any of the inhabitants. And yet, Jumbo Village and its people meant more to me than any of the other games I've played. More than the handler, more than the twins, and obviously more than Nata. I mean, he was born to be hated. That is because DOS capitalizes on what I think is the biggest strength of video games. Video games can do traditional stories that we are most accustomed to in movies and books, and they can do it incredibly well, like the recent Clair Obscur. But the more complex a story is, the more difficult it becomes to fit it harmoniously with gameplay. Where video games' natural strength lies, again this is just my opinion, is providing a certain experience. Games are closer to poetry in that sense, which take one particular theme and really hammer it home, putting more emphasis on how we feel rather than building a cohesive narrative. The characters in Monster Hunter 2 rarely talk about any personal stuff, and when they do, it's for flavor and not any character development or revelations down the line. The Forge Granny talks about equipment and materials, the Trader Cat talks about trading and items, the Village Chief talks about threats to the village and expanding the village. But the lack of extra stuff really hones in on the core experience of the game, being a hunter for a village. Not a hunter to save the world or end catastrophes, just a small man or woman against nature. This surprisingly adds so much meaning to the big story moments, so to say. Seeing the different landmarks get upgraded, seeing new people join the village, even the least ceremonious things like new items being available for purchase. You did this. And you didn't just go on autopilot to do it. It was a struggle. And if you haven't played the game and are just looking at this text as I fought Kushala Dawara for the first time, you might find it a bit generic, maybe even cheesy. But if you have played and have experienced the trials of being a hunter for Jumbo Village, they truly mean something. Older games which were limited by technology had to find creative ways to immerse players. It's not that technologically advanced games don't show creativity, but that limitations force creative solutions out of devs. As an example, take Caesar 3, a city building game which I was playing to take breaks from DOS, because you need breaks from DOS. As you can see, it's a very old game. The sprites are well made, but how do you make the city come alive when you just have a 2D isometric angle? Caesar 3 decided that the key would be audio. You can right click any sprite in the game to open an information window, and when this window pops up, you get a sound associated with that sprite. But these sounds also randomly play whenever the associated sprites are on screen. So when you start a new map, you just have the background music playing and maybe the occasional birds chirping. But as you build up your city, more and more audio gets added, and it eventually creates a rich and full soundscape that makes the city feel alive and breathing. Even the citizens are brought to life through audio. You can right click them at any time and they will give their thoughts on the city.
Unemployment is very high here. I'm thinking of leaving.
In the same way, Monster Hunter DOS chose difficulty as a way to make the world feel alive. I'm saying difficulty, but it's not just difficulty in the sense of the game being hard, it's more about patience. Things are slow and you are expected to be deliberate and methodical. Gathering and crafting takes time. New monsters will wall you, seasons will stall your progress. It can get tedious at times. But that is why, when the village chief tells us that the Elder Dragon will be a hard fight, but that he believes that we will persevere, those words ring true in our mind and fill us with honest gratitude and hope. And in evoking those emotions, the game's flaws are forgiven, and only the feeling of pride is left. Pride from tribulations and from triumphs. So yes, I enjoyed DOS a lot, but then the final question remains. Which is better, new or old gen? I'll make this specifically about DOS and Wilds though, since I've only played this one old gen game and it would be unfair to pit it against all of new Monster Hunter. And the truth is, none comes on top of the other decisively. Both shine in certain aspects, and just kidding folks, don't you hate videos that do that? So my preference is... Wilds. Sorry guys, I know I glazed DOS a lot, but if you watch some of my older content, which you probably haven't, so please do, then you know how much importance I put on consistency. And although Monster Hunter 2 reaches incredible heights, Wilds is just more of a consistently fun experience. And yes, there are boring moments there with the on-rails sections and cringe story moments, and you could make an argument that the game is really easy so the fights themselves are boring, but easy boring is way better than hard boring. And this is me putting myself in someone else's shoes. I don't even think the fights were boring. Easy fights can be fun, and the monsters are just really well designed in Wilds. Whereas in DOS, if you take away the difficulty, if you take away the jank, most of the monsters are about as exciting as a Twitch stream. Especially when it comes to bipedal non-humanoid monsters, there's a lot of moves being shared, and getting to know the monster is basically getting to know what moves are bullshit and what moves are not. Although victory over them might feel better than in Wilds, fighting them does not, and good and fairly telegraphed patterns are ultimately better. Because although I myself am not man enough to recognize them and style on the monsters, I can appreciate by watching those with better skills do it. And the fact that that is possible is a point to the newer games. When DOS does do a monster without any unfairness, I accept that it's more peaked than Wilds, like Kongalala. Kongalala's cutscene in Wilds was so good, but I didn't need to learn its moves. Wilds is reactive. I see him move, I dodge. DOS is planned. When I see him do the 4 swipes, I'm like, yeah, the swipes! Time to pay back all the farting. But these fights are rare in DOS. Rathian is fun, but he still has that way too quick dash. Dodging Daimyo Hamita's burrow attack is easy, but if you get hit once, it's basically nighttime. Kezu speeds up so much as he gets low on health that he can attack faster than his animation. Let that sink in and craft a shield or gun out of it, because you won't be able to dodge his electric barrier attack once he speeds up. The only other fight that felt as fun but also as fair as the Gassy Gobbler was Blangonga. Maybe I have internalized Return to Monkey, but Blangonga is just fantastic. Gave me the same vibe as Tigrex with how relentless he is. But DOS drags him down a bit too, with the poor camera, which makes it difficult to keep up with a monster as agile as the king of the Blangos. In summation, if DOS's fights had the same polish as newer games, it could have beat out Wilds. But it doesn't. So, although DOS does a better job of making you feel like a hunter through its emphasis on preparation, Wilds still wins out as a package. And World is better than both. But the clutch claw, I hate the clutch claw, so let's wrap this up before I get into a tangent. I hope it is evident by the fact that these words came out of my mouth that they are my opinions. Therefore, they are objective and you can disagree with me, but you will have to do it at the cost of being wrong. Jokes aside, I don't want to hide behind the "it's all subjective" argument. I think there are ways to argue that are closer to the truth than others. It all depends on the evidence. And I hope that the facts I relied on helped to strengthen my case, instead of making me look like an uneducated fool, and that I implied subjectivity wherever it was necessary. Like, I think it is objectively true that Monster Hunter 2 is unfair and tedious in parts, but that choosing the newer games over it is my preference. So with this lack of a conclusive statement and a little bit of covering my ass, I come to the end of this video. And I hope you liked it. If you did, let me know, because I tried something new with this longer style of video, and if you enjoyed it, I'd like to do more. But with that being said, check out my other videos as well. They're shorter, but sometimes that's a good thing. Anyways, if you made it till the end, I love you, thank you, and bye bye.